you've already done inspections, you've got your buyers paid for the appraisal, and you need to get out of the contract, and they didn't deliver the seller's disclosure within 5 days. You can get out of the contract. Now, this is death to a deal, but as a listing agent, it is important that you do not miss this deadline because they can back out of the contract the day before closing. And I have actually used this particular clause. So the way that we avoid this problem is when you're putting your listing on the MLS, if you put it in under attachments, then it's considered as delivered to the buyer.
Now, is 5 days like a standard deal, or is there?
I usually do 3 days.
Okay.
But I've seen all sorts of days, but I'd say between 3 and 5 days.
But if you're doing it, more than likely you're putting it on the onto the attachments anyway, so it's on there.
Exactly. I don't have to. If you'll put it on the attachments, you don't have to worry about it.
Gotcha.
Okay. So some really important parts of the seller's disclosure. This is page 1, and the address goes here, and this is the absolutely only thing that the agent can fill out. Do not sit down at the seller's house and mark off all of these things, because the minute you do, there's going to be a mistake, and who are they going to start pointing the finger at when it comes to court time? So it's very, very important that you don't fill out. And I know it's tempting to do, but please do not do that. One thing on page 1 of the seller's disclosure that I noticed a lot of agents are missing is over here, they'll mark yes, no, or unknown, but they forget to fill in all of this information. And this information is super important. Okay.
The address or the property are you going to put it the actual address, or are you going to use the legal description?
No, the actual address.
Actual address. Okay.
Now, another issue that I see a lot with the seller's disclosure is the roof type. And most people do not have any idea what kind of roof they have. 95% of the time, it's a composition roof. And if they don't know the age of the roof, that's okay. They can either put unknown, or it's okay to say approximately 10 years. But this has to be filled out. Okay. Now this is the one that's tricky, and I know as tempting as it is for each of y'all to fill this out for your sellers, you just cannot. But you can give them the information, and it's asking, the big one here is, does it have present flood insurance coverage? You'll see this in about 50% of the homes, but what is super important is that you're going to have to attach the Form 1414, which is also known as the special flood addendum. Personally, every contract that I write, I include the special flood addendum, and it's just good practice because it's good information for your buyers. So, and to find this information, you can do it a couple of ways. You can have your client go to the FEMA website and put in the property address, or you can also find it here under flood map, and this gives you some of the information that you're going to need to put on the seller's disclosure.
Concerning the flood information, I know there's a 100 year and a 500 year, but there's also, it breaks it down to AR and AV and all this other stuff. Where do you get the information of what that stuff means?
It's actually right there on, let me see. Well, I just had, there it is. Right here, Zone X,
Yep.
an
Okay.
area determined to be outside the 100 and 500 year floodplains.
Gotcha.
And down here is a little color coded map for you.
Right.
That helps you out as well.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, you really have to present this. This is a required form anytime any of these circumstances happen. So even if they've had previous water penetration, you know, then you definitely are going to need the special flood addendum.
So if it's not in a flood zone, or if it's never been flooded or anything, none of that stuff.
You don't have to provide it, but I always provide it. I just consider it good practice. The more information that we provide to our clients, you know, they need this information. And it's just good general information about flooding. I also have my buyers during the option period, they need to pick up the phone and call their insurance carrier and determine if flood insurance is going to be required. Okay.
I just wanted to interrupt a little bit there, Stacy. On yes, so that is so very important, and actually it made me change my practice, because I normally, you know, previously I wouldn't know that a house required flood insurance. Neither did the lender until we were about 2 to 3 weeks under contract.
Oh, yeah.
And then, oh, surprise. And then that seriously fluctuated the monthly payment and, you know, caused the client to have to cancel. So I always feel it's best practice to, if you have an insurance relationship with an insurance person, be sure to check that, especially if you're the listing agent. It'll allow you to know as well too if that's an issue that'll arise as well too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I always have my buyers doing during, you know, when the option period first begins. Definitely. Okay. Now on this page, it is required that we have the homeowner's information, or the HOA's full information, because we need to know, of course, well, it's just helpful if we need to call the HOA management company for some reason. We also need to know how much the annual fees are for the HOA, if they're mandatory, if they're voluntary. And then also, they've got a place here. Sometimes your seller is behind on their HOA dues. And when they let you know that, it's better to address that up front and let the title company know, hey, we have an issue here, and we're going to have to collect those HOA dues at closing. Okay. Now, if your seller has a survey, they need to mark that they do have a survey. And what is so important that most agents seem to forget is that they've got to have a T47 to go along with that. And depending on how the contract is written, if the contract says that the survey is to be delivered within 3 days, that's not just the survey, that's also the T47.
And
so
the T47, sorry, the T47 comes with if the survey has been done previously, right? Not at this.
Correct. If the sellers have one, and they usually have one when they purchase the home, they will provide that to the buyer just to save the buyer a little bit of money. But if they have a survey, it's so important that the T47 is included.
Gotcha.
And we see a lot of agents that forget about that. So definitely need to make sure that you do this. Okay. Another item is,
Stacy,
yes, ma'am.
if they've given you the survey and they did not give you the T47, do you still check the box that says that you received the survey?
Well, this is the list, I'm sorry, the listing agent is filling out that they have attached a survey of the property.
Right, but as the buying agent, and I'm checking that we've received the survey.
No, then you should not.
It depends on if the survey has been done previously or if it was just done, right? If the buyer,
Yes.
seller
Yes,
came and said,
it's a previous survey.
Right.
It's not one that was just done a month ago or so. Okay, next is about smoke detectors. And your average seller does not know building code. So I traditionally will mark, I will tell them it's best to mark unknown. I mean, if they do know what the building code is, they can certainly mark it, but unknown is a better choice. A lot of my sellers are lazy and they don't want to put all this information, but it really does help not only the agents, but it also helps buyers when they go to have their utilities turned on. Oops. Okay. Now, there are 4 circumstances when the seller does not have to provide a seller's disclosure. And they're death, debt, divorce, and dwelling. So the 4 Ds, okay? Death is, of course, if you have an estate sale and the, the family is selling the property because they've never lived in the property, so they don't have knowledge of what's wrong with the house. Debt, if you purchase a foreclosure, the bank is not required to provide a seller's disclosure. And then, or if it's in a bankruptcy, also not required. Now, if you're lucky enough to get a couple that is in the middle of a divorce, and that's always fun, there's no disclosure if, say, the husband is giving it to the wife or the wife is giving it to the husband, or, and this also applies if family members, if your dad is buying your home, you're not required to provide a disclosure. The next is dwelling. If it is a brand new property, so if it's new construction, a seller's disclosure is not going to be required. And then, or if its value is less than 5% of the value of the property being sold. And the best scenario to explain this is, let's say you've got a big fancy piece of land. It's, it's $1 million piece of land. And then you've got some little shack on it that's worth, $1,000. As long as that shack is not more than 5% of the value of the property, then you are not required to use a seller's disclosure. Y'all are going to find that all the time investors are going to say, no, I don't have to fill out a seller's disclosure. And it does not apply most of the time. So those are the 4 categories of where you don't have to provide a seller's disclosure. So death, debt, divorce, and dwelling. Okay. When in doubt, disclose, disclose, disclose. There are sellers who will lie to you, and you only know what they tell you. But if you know something, if you know there's a problem with the house, you have to emphasize how important it is to your sellers that it's got to be disclosed, or they are going to get sued. And if they refuse to do that, my suggestion is for them to find a new agent.
Specializes as a trauma surgeon in emergency.
Okay, guys. Any questions?
States and field hospitals in Syria before moving on to a.
I think you pretty much covered it.
Do y'all understand how important? Well, the big one on this is that deadline. That could really kill a deal for y'all. Like I said, I've used this because I had to, but I don't want any of y'all to get it used on you. So, it is, because there are times when we're past, we're past all of our options, and for whatever reason, we need to get out of a contract. This is a good way to get out if they did not deliver it on time.
So in the process of putting their property on the MLS and setting it up for sale, when is the proper time to give this to them and say, hey, you need to fill this out, and say, we need this to be part of the the presentation for the buyer?
The sooner the better. What I'll do is before I even send them the listing agreement, I will send that to them in a separate email and say something to the effect of, hey guys, I'm going to need this form filled out before we put it on the market. So would you please print it out, fill it out, and get it back to me as soon as possible. Also, if you happen to have a survey, I need you to please send that to me as well. And then that's my signal. It's like, oh, they've got a survey. Okay, cool. I've got to get them a T47 as well.
Right. Okay. So you tell them that, and they come back to you and say, oh my God, I can't fill this out all myself. At what is the, I guess,
it's okay to help them.
Okay, how can you help with them?
Well, okay. They're gonna ask you, questions such as, oh gosh, what is a septic system? And that's when you tell them, oh, you're on public water, public sewer, or you're on a mud. So you ask them, do you have a septic company come out and clean out your septic tanks? Then no, you don't have a septic system. But and there are some crazy ones on there too that that I barely understand. So it's definitely it's okay to tell your people that if they don't know, unknown is an option.
Okay. So if they don't understand it,
yeah,
hey, put unknown.
If they don't know, they don't know.
I think part of the difficulty as well too for a seller in filling this out, especially that, little old lady, or if there's a, language barrier thing, it's just really intimidating to them. It looks like a lot of questions and you're just like, I don't think I can do this, especially like that older generation that tells their kids to read the mail. I don't know what it says,
Well,
and
even the younger generation that will go to page 1 and realize there's a page 2 and go, oh my God, I can't go this far,
Yeah.
Yes. And so it can look intimidating. And so a good guideline, I think, is to, if you want to sit down with them or go over the phone with them line by line, and then just read to them what it says, and have them, if they really, there's that unknown, and go ahead and fill it out. But I would say leave it to their handwriting, let their pen touch that paper, and just help them read through it.
So just guide them. That's
correct.
Okay.
And also, I would say as well too, guys, you know, when you're out there with buyers, I would ask for the seller's disclosure before even submitting an offer if possible. They should, you know, freely and willingly have those. I have had some experiences where they'll say, oh, well, we'll provide that to you once we have an executed contract. And, you know, the only thing that does to me is saying like, why, what's going on? And,
Right.
you know, if they haven't filled it out and that's what they say, then, you know, oh, okay, I understand. But there aren't, you know, it was a very odd instance that it was as if they were trying to be deceptive and not providing like full-on information. But you can provide these to your clients as well too, even before you go on that showing, if you want to share that with them so that they kind of see what they're getting into and all those kinds of things. It's very helpful. I'm thankful when an agent does put that up there because I can see if the property flooded or not, because I sit here and I have to hunt down agents just to find out if it flooded or not.
Yeah.
I even had one that had a great smart attitude reply and said, oh, well, the map is there. I'm saying, hun, there are houses that require flood insurance that never flooded and homes that have flooded that don't require flood insurance. So, you know, it's really important to know, and it's such a, you know, please in your listings, please include whether it flooded or not so that we don't have to hunt you down.
Yeah.
Or put the seller's disclosure up so we can figure that out as well too. But I would also say as well too, don't hold on so tightly waiting for that seller's disclosure that you lose an opportunity for your client. I have had that to where we're waiting on the seller's disclosure, waiting, and they went ahead and accepted another offer that wasn't waiting on it, and they were just waiting for, you know, waiting to see what happened. So, you know, you don't want to lose an opportunity waiting for it either.
That's great advice. Definitely. Definitely. Okay, and usually when I'm showing a house, I'll go read the seller's disclosure just to get some general information about the house, such as did it flood, what is the age of the roof, and any other, you know, if they're telling you, hey, there's a problem with the plumbing, that's when it's good time to tell your buyers. It's like, look, in the seller's disclosure, there's some sort of plumbing issue that we need to look into.
Yeah, I went to an open house and they actually had a binder with all the information on the house, and the seller's disclosure was part of that. So it seemed to me like that was a good idea to have.
That is a good idea. Definitely. Definitely. Okay, Danielle, do you have anything else to add?
Sorry, I had to mute myself there.
Danielle?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
No, I would just say, you know, provide it when possible, you know, to your client when possible, when you're out there representing buyers, and also pay attention to some really important things when you're out there. If you're looking out for those, obviously the age of the roof is important, but not just that, pay attention to whether it has aluminum wiring or galvanized pipes. That's typically something you'll run into on an older home. And I would definitely talk about that with your client because it's something that'll definitely come up later in this inspection report if they didn't notice it on the seller's disclosure. And sometimes that can be a deal breaker because many times the seller's not willing to repipe the whole house, and a buyer's not willing to take a, you know, house that has galvanized pipes because they create pinholes and, you know, can burst, and, you know, that could be costly. But that's a whole nother subject. But you know, aluminum wiring is old. You know, will you have to ask them to pigtail those wires? And you know, if they haven't already, and if not, you may want to look into a younger house that maybe has copper wiring instead of the aluminum wiring. So you know, just different things you want to look at on that seller's disclosure and be helpful to your clients as much as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, guys, anybody else have any questions? No? Okay. Well, my name is Stacy Foster. If y'all have any questions, feel free to call me or your mentor. My number is 713-705-7837. And I will wish y'all a good evening.
Thanks, Stacy.
Okay. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Bye.
Sleep with angels, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.